Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Thanks, Brenda. All right, so before we get started, I'd like to thank the speaker hosts who helped me out this weekend, Donovan, Jess, and Randy, who helped out, stepped in to help out with Amy. And of course, Brenda, who almost stepped in. Okay, all right, but was gazumped by Randy. Okay, so, it's been a great weekend. I've had to wait all weekend to get to hear Sterling. All the other speakers got to hear theirs really quickly. And so I've been really excited to hear what Sterling's got to say. I had the privilege of picking him up from the airport, and I was too busy listening to what he was saying and ended up missing at least 2 turnoffs and having to do a couple of U-turns, But we managed to survive the Houston traffic and get here. And it's, it's been a great conference. I've had a great time being on the committee, and I'm looking forward to doing it all again next year. So without further ado, I'll give you Sterling Watts.
I'm Sterling Watts. I'm a happy alcoholic. Hi, everybody. I tell you, it's been quite a weekend. Mark's great. He picked me up and we got lost. We couldn't find his car right from the start. I figured, well, this is fine. After 25 or 30 minutes, we located it in a parking lot. But this was, I used to do this all the time, so that didn't bother me. And we got here early, and Tony and Jessica were in here decorating. And I knew it was going to be a great conference because Jessica's back out there, and they had these little flowers. And she's measuring like this and say, move the yellow one just a little bit, move the red one just a little bit. So I knew they'd paid a lot of attention to getting ready, and isn't it pretty? Another thing, it takes a lot of work to put one of these conferences on, and they've done, you notice how quick they clear the chairs and get ready for the dance? It takes a lot of stuff to do that. And I don't know that I've ever been anywhere where they had a better hospitality room, and I'd like for y'all to give a big hand to whoever did the hospitality. Thanks to them, I almost couldn't get my britches on this morning. I want to apologize. Somebody said you never should apologize when you start to talk because they're going to be looking for why you apologize. But I've got some kind of allergy this morning. Somebody said it was Houston air, but my nose is running, my eyes hurt, and you got a sponsor that's always he'll tell you what's wrong. I called him and I was talking to him, I usually do before I talk, and he said, I told him how I was enjoying all the beautiful ladies out here in Texas. Y'all got the prettiest women in the world. And he says that's probably what was wrong with my eyes. I'd been paying too much attention to them, but, the way my nose is running, I was thinking, alcoholism, you got to be tough to be an alcoholic, and we get a lot of experience. We can handle anything. I can remember we used to judge a trip by like it's an 8-beer trip or a pint trip. So this is probably going to be a 2-handkerchief talk this morning, so y'all, I apologize to you. I feel like I'm here because I'm a real alcoholic that's found a substitute for alcohol. That's kind of what I want to tell you a little bit about this morning, is how a guy like me found that substitute for alcohol and how I realized I needed it. I needed a substitute for alcohol. I couldn't get along without it. And when I got here, they told me they had a substitute. You all said, we got a substitute for alcohol. And they said it was a fellowship here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And you kind of find out, I thought that was great knowledge, but I found out it's on page 152. They'd been reading the book, and that's what I was supposed to do. But anyway, they said for this thing to work, you got to do some things. You got to go to meetings. You got to get a sponsor. You got to work the steps. You got to sponsor people. You got to make coffee. In those days, clean ashtrays. They just had a lot of things you were supposed to do to keep you busy. And because I did those things to the very best of my ability, I haven't found it necessary to take a drink since September the 25th, 1973. And I really... Now, in hunting this substitute, I went through a lot of different things, and so I want to tell you this morning that it's also important since that day that I met you all in September the 25th in '73. It hadn't been necessary for me to be analyzed, tranquilized, hypnotized, or baptized. I'm an alcoholic. I'm fortunate. Alcoholics Anonymous has done everything that anything that I had wrong, I've been able to solve with good sponsorship and them concentrating with me on having me concentrate on what I'm supposed to do in the first 164 pages of this big book. And the longer I stay sober, I sometimes forget this, and I want to get it up right front. It's been my opinion, and we kind of get opinionated after we've been sober a while, I think, because we notice things that are going on if you're going to meetings regularly. And it's just my opinion that if you are an alcoholic of the type that's described in our book, the 5 types in the doctor's opinion, that there's absolutely no better place for you than right here in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the only place that I know that I see people that have our disease that are reasonably happy, joyous, and free. Now, I know a lot of alcoholics got sober other places. A lot of alcoholics got sober here in Alcoholics Anonymous, and they've turned to other things to feed their sobriety. But they're not drinking, but there's a big difference in not drinking and being happy, joyous, and free. And that's what I found here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And every alcoholic that I see, if you'll just, really doesn't take much. Just sit down, keep your mouth shut, listen to your sponsor, and do what they tell you. And slowly, if you come long enough, we'll get you. No matter what your attitude is, just come and sit and we'll get you. And so, today you hear a whole lot about problems other than alcohol. Now, I had problems other than alcohol before I ever knew alcohol existed. See, I'm not only an alcoholic, I'm a hillbilly. I'm from the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia. I'm the only son of a hillbilly school teacher. I was born right in the middle of the Depression, and they named me Sterling Fletcher Watts III. I don't think I had a chance from the very get-go. And it's amazing when I look back how things bothered me. For the first 18, I never had any identity. I never felt like I knew who I was. Mama taught school for about 40 years up there in the mountains, so the first 18 years of my life, everywhere I went, I was Miss Kitty's little boy. And when I was, 18 or 19, I married a prominent farmer's daughter, and I became Mac Jackson's son-in-law. And then I left Virginia to get to South Carolina to get away from some of that stuff, and I had one son, Waldo, and he was quite a football player. He was All-State, played at Clemson, later signed in the pros. And when I got there, I became Waldo's daddy. And so you can see that when I get here at Alcoholics Anonymous and I can come and stand up here and say I'm Sterling Watts, man, I thought I'd arrived, And I don't know. I meet a lot of you all. I've never met one that said, I'm from Houston and I just drank too much and I came in, knocked on the door and said, I want to get spiritual. I want to work these 12 steps and quit this drinking. Some of you did that. I didn't. I had a lot of help getting here. I had help from judges and troopers and preachers and doctors and Everybody was minding my business, but I had a lot of help for Al-Anon. See, my wife went to Al-Anon about 6 or 8 months before I ever came into Alcoholics Anonymous, and in fact, I say that I became powerless over alcohol when I became powerless over Al-Anon is why I'm here in Alcoholics Anonymous. But so she'd been there 6 or 7 months longer than I had, and the first night, do you all remember the first night they ever asked you to read? Man, an old timer asked me, he was chairing, said, "Would you read?" I took the 12 steps back in the restroom and I studied them. I didn't want to. I was so proud, and I'm sitting there, and he says, "Tonight, to read how it works," and he forgot my name and said, "Nancy's husband." And and you know, I need that. I need that with the type of ego I have, and I find that no matter where I go, I'll be sitting around, and there'll be an old timer like the guy here that recited the Man in the Glass, and I'll start bloviating, and he'll call on old what's his name. He lets me know who I am, you know. So I needed that, and I was a different kind of kid. As long as I can remember, when I started talking, I never remember talking not lying. I just loved to lie. I was a born liar, lie about anything, you know. And I was a little bit different kind of liar. I not only lied and left, I kept lying and kept staying there until you believed the lie I was telling you. And, you know, to show you that I'd lie about anything, when I was raised in a fundamentalist home, and we had to memorize Bible verses and recite them on Sunday morning, on all day Sunday before we ate at the dinner table. And I was capable of memorizing Bible verses, but I love to make them up. And one of the ones that I made up was, "If a man goeth on a long journey and returneth not, he stayeth a long while." And now, you know, it's bad enough to be making up the scriptures, but what I love was the old folks thumbing through that Bible late at night. That just made me feel warm all over, I can tell you that. In this home, there were 4 of us: a mother, a father, and I had one sister, 5 years older than I, and she was the second most perfect person to ever walk the face of the earth. She never told a lie. She never came home late. She made great grades all through school, and just a perfect person. You know, valedictorian in high school, dean's list in college, and it started, I can't remember, but it started early on. Why can't you be like Elizabeth? And I was hearing this, and I didn't know why I couldn't be like Elizabeth. And you know, in this little family unit, everybody had some idea of what they wanted me to be. My daddy wanted me to be a trial lawyer. My mama wanted me to be a Methodist preacher. My sister just wanted me to go away, you know, and nobody asked me what I wanted. And it's quite interesting, I think, what happened later, that what I wanted. I had a guy there in our community, his name was R.L., His daddy was a drunk, and his mom had left home, and he was living there with his drunk daddy, and he had no rules to follow. It was the greatest thing. I'm 9 or 10 years old, and R.L. had no rules. He could go swimming naked anytime he wanted to. He could go barefoot anytime he wanted to, and the main thing I loved about him, he didn't have to take a bath till he wanted to. And I loved everything about R.L. I even loved the way he smelled. He had that gusto, you know. And everywhere I went, it seemed like to me I smelled like lifebuoy smoke, lifebuoy soap where Mom had been washing all my ears. And so, you know, and later in life, that was my ambition. I can remember probably one of my first prayers was that my daddy'd get drunk and Mom would leave home and I could live like R.L. And some of these things never end. In fact, after I've been sober a while, I'll go on vacation, and I kind of like maybe to go a day or two and not take a shower and not shave. And my wife will look and say, "I believe R.L.'s come to make a visit," you know. So, but That's the kind of ambition I had. And now, when I was when I was a teenager, I'm sure I drank something, but I just don't remember it. It wasn't important. My first drink, I don't remember. I probably had some beers in high school. It just doesn't make any difference. Because I was so closely, everybody knew my family, and so I was so closely supervised that it just didn't make any difference. But shortly after graduating from high school, I enlisted in the service, and I had to go 55 miles away from my home down to Roanoke, Virginia, to be inducted into the Army. And that was the first time that I'd ever been that far away from home without adult supervision. And that night I got drunk and I got sick and I almost died. And to show you that I have no doubts about the insanity of alcoholism, because 27 years later, 3 states away, I'm still drinking too much, still sick and almost dying. So there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that doing the same thing over and over and over and over again was my insanity. My story in service is very, very quick. I stayed drunk. I hated everything in the world about service, and I stayed drunk the whole time I was in there, stayed trouble the whole time. And when I went in, it was in 1946, and I went in to get the GI Bill to go to school, and they had a little window there when you stayed 18 months, you got all the GI Bills. If you could chew gum and walk, you could make tech sergeant. I went in as a private and came out as a private. So, and it ended up, I was 13 months in Korea, and that may be what started the war. I don't know. But anyway, when I got back to Camp Stoneman, after about 2 weeks in California, Captain Tollison called me and said, Watts, said, you're a good guy and you probably got some potential in the world. If you'll just go home and leave us alone, I'll give you an honorable discharge. But he said, it looks like to me if you stay here, you'll end up in Leavenworth. So that ended my Army career. Now, I got home and industry had moved into the mountains while I'd been gone, and I was one of the 5th hirees of a nice big plant that Burlington Industry had started, got started right on the ground floor. I married my childhood sweetheart. Things were going along real well. I worked hard, worked a lot of long hours. I found out later that most alcoholics do this. If you're going to drink, you got to get extra money. So I'd work hard so I could play hard, And things are going well. I'm getting promotions. In 1955, a group of us bought a piece of land with, like people were doing after World War II, and we all built little homes out there. And year after we were married, my son came along, and things are just looking good. And if you'd asked me during this time if I had a problem with alcohol, I had no problem with alcohol. I drank strong and hard, but the idea of being in the textile industry, you worked real hard, so you should play real hard, and we did. And so I would have thought absolutely no problem. But when I did my 4th step, I had to look back, and this covers a period from about 1948 to like 1962. And during that period of time, I was in 5 or 6 automobiles, totally lost. Sometimes I was driving, sometimes I was riding. Most of the time we had no idea who was riding and who was driving. We couldn't straighten it all out. And during that time, one Thanksgiving day, I had 3 accidents in the same day. And that day I hit the same man twice. And this just wasn't over in the parking lot where I'd hit him first. This was 15 miles away in the afternoon after I'd hit him that morning. And in those days, you just called your insurance company and reported your accident, and they took care of it. And this time I reported this second accident, and the insurance agent said, Watts, how drunk are you? I said, why? He said, well, you reported that accident this morning. I said, man, I'm not drunk. I've hit him again, you know. You know, it's amazing. I've always been a victim. I've always been a victim. Things just, you know, I'm not handy with tools. I don't know a screwdriver from a pair of pliers. I don't have a green thumb. I'm never going to have a good yard unless somebody else does it. And it looks like to me, everywhere I ever moved, that I'll look out the window and right across the street they'll have a sign, Yard of the Month. And most I ever got was like Wild Onion of the Decade or something, you know. And it started out soon after we were married. Nancy started saying, well, why can't you be like Tom and why can't you be like Bill? Well, that didn't bother me. I'd been to boot camp on why I can't be like Elizabeth. So it made sense to me that I was less than. And I tell you this, I told you about building those houses. They were supposed to be turnkey houses. And, well, the handymen, they started this stuff. Some of them put in their furnace. Some of them put a deck on. Some of them put the roof on. And I'm not doing anything. I think that's the first time that I ever remember impending doom. She's sitting there looking at me, big boy, when are you going to do something, you know? And she'd gone up to her dad's one July day, and I took a look around. I used to drink, I call it real intelligent liquor, and I could get real intelligent when I drank. But anyway, I noticed the whole area and nobody had put in their mailbox yet. And I thought, boy, I'll get to jump on this. I'll put that mailbox in. Now, when I look back on this, by this time in my life, I was using liquor for anything that I didn't want to do. If I had any kind of job I didn't like, I had a certain amount of liquor. Mentally, like if I were going to borrow money, that took a fifth. If I was going to trade cars, it took a fifth. I didn't get along well with that sister. I called, if she was coming to visit, that was my 2-pint sister. So I never had put in a mailbox, so I had no idea how much liquor to sign to it. So, but I'm sure that made sure that I wasn't going to run out. Anyway, the way I put this mailbox in probably has an indication it was done alcoholically. I went down to the plant and got the head engineer and had him, we took a 8-foot 2-inch pipe and put another 8-foot 1.5-inch pipe down in that and spot welded it all the way up, and I brought it back to Pulaski and put it in a 4 feet of reimbursed steel concrete and put it down in that hole and tamped it well. I went down to Sears and got the biggest mailbox they had. I put Sterling Fletcher Watts III. It might have been in Old English letters. I'm not sure, but I had it done right, and I had it tamped down there real well, and I went into my bedroom. She'd gone up to her father's, and I went into my bedroom, and I'm laying there thinking, only a drunk knows this. You remember before you crossed the invisible line, maybe when you drank all day and you worked hard and you're just going into that peaceful slumber, only a drunk knows, you know. And I'm thinking, gosh, she's going to be proud of you. And she comes back and sees that mailbox in. The next morning at 5 o'clock, my neighbor called and said, Watts, what in the world was wrong with you yesterday? I said, why? He said, you got that mailbox in facing your house. Now, it took me about an hour to dig it up and get it turned around. It looked like I'd built a small swimming pool there, you know. Now, there's always something good comes out of these things. Since I've been telling that story, nobody has ever asked me to come over and help them fix anything. If they're building a deck, I'll say you need help. Oh, that's all right. You just, but this time, our marriage is not working all that well. My wife hated the whole drinking scene. She just hated all. I've had her say, I'd promised her I wasn't going to drink, and I've come home and she'd say, you almost stopped and got a beer. She knew what I was thinking, and the things I like to do, she wasn't too. I like to hang around the beer joints, the pool rooms, play cards, go out on the creek bank, fish, and stay drunk, and do exciting things like that. And she just hated the whole drinking scene. And so it seemed like to me at that time what had happened, we had a muscular chemical. I know today the psychologists would have loved this. They would have called it a muscular chemical thing. Every time I bent a muscle to take a chemical, her mouth flew open. And I call that chin music. And that was the chinniest woman you ever saw in your life. I never got to drink, and I just couldn't drink in peace. That's all there was to it. So by this time at the company, I had had several promotions, and I was buying a lot of textile equipment and chemicals and so forth, and all the salesmen would call on me, and they did a lot of entertaining, and they drank just like I did. And they were great guys, and I loved the way they drank, but I noticed one thing. They left home on Monday, they got home on Friday, they had 5 days. Drink anything you want, no chin music. So I gave up probably the very best job I ever had with Burlington Industries and got a job, went to South Carolina to sell chemicals. And, I'll never forget, I went to work for a small chemical, one owner chemical company, and its headquarters is in Rhode Island. And he said an interesting thing to me that you alcoholics will just really like. He said, my name is not well known in the South. And I want you to take this unlimited expense account and this new automobile, and I want you to get my name well established in the South. Now, today I know that he meant where he had chemicals to sell. I got them everywhere. Every judge, every state trooper, everybody knew that man's company before I was through. And I thought I'd done an extra job for him. I was going to bill him when I quit, but anyway. And during this period of time, I was driving like 50,000 miles a year. And I had something like 5 or 6 DUIs. I had 5 for sure. I'm not sure about the other one. And I never really, in those days, you could find the right people with the right amount of money and buy out of these things. And I realize today that was a big drawback for me. Had it been like it is today, or even then, if I'd have had to been responsible for my conduct and held accountable, you'd have a different story or a different speaker, because what this did for me, when I'd beat a rap like that, I would think I was just like God. I'd get out of jail, go by the Elks Club, get a half pint and drink it and throw it out on the courthouse lawn and drive out of town. They can't stop me. That arrogance just got going, and eventually, being able to continue to work and drink and get paid for it, things begin to happen mentally and physically, and I'd go to doctors, and they tried a lot of stuff. In those days, they really leaned on psychiatry a lot. Now, I got the greatest amount of respect for psychiatry when you need them. If you need a psychiatrist, then it's great. But if you're an alcoholic of my type and you didn't want to be there, and you're going to lie to them anyway, and I have sponsored in my time a couple of psychiatrists, but I'm convinced that there's not a psychiatrist prepared for an alcoholic that doesn't want to be there. If we stay there long enough, we'll put him in an institution. I had this guy dangling just like a puppet, but he observed, he said, he told my wife, he said, I'm going to, next time he acts up. Now, in that something, he wouldn't say drunk. Charging too much, I guess. He said, acts up, I'm going to put him where I can observe him more closely. Well, back in the 60s, the latter part of the 60s and early 70s, they didn't have a detox, they didn't have a treatment center or anything, either jail or the hospital for the emotionally disturbed. So I got to go to the hospital for the emotionally disturbed. And it's interesting, I've been out there 4 or 5 times. I've been out there in the back of a pickup truck. I've been out there in the trunk of a car. I've been out in an ambulance. I've been everywhere you can go stone drunk every time. Look at my medical records, and it says things like hypertension, paranoia, and that kind of thing. It never, bipolar, never says drunk. Again, I think that was because of the prices they were charging. They just, they couldn't charge you drunk. Well, I'm a kind of alcoholic that if you give me a couple of shots of Valium, liquid Valium, and let me sleep 4 or 5 days, I'll come right out of it. And I tell you now how I remember all this. All of a sudden, one day I come to and I'm in occupational therapy. And I'm amazed. I'm making leather watch bands. I'm making ceramic ashtrays, and I've never been able to do anything like that. And I loved those leather watch bands. I got so I could make one leather watch band in 1 hour. And it took the next best one in there 3 hours to make one of those watch bands. Now, I'm talking quality stuff here, and I'm turning these wrist watch bands out. If they hadn't run out of leather, I'd still be over there, I believe. And my wife came to see me one day, and she said, you're going to have to hurry up and get well or something. Said the bosses begin to wonder where you were. See, we didn't have Facebook and Twitter and Twitch and all this, and you could hide, and I could keep things covered up. But she said they're checking on you, and I said, well, don't worry about it. I said, if I lose my job, I can stay on here as a head occupational therapist because I'm the very best in that class down there. None of them can. Well, they had a thing. They called us clients, and they had 20 clients in my group, and there were 19 women and me, and 17 of these women had hysterectomies, and if you alcoholics think you got a problem, you haven't heard nothing yet. These ladies they had problems I didn't even have any concern about, and I remember getting out one time, and I came home, and she said, well, what'd you find out? And I told her. I said, my drinking's worrying you to death, and it's not bothering me. Why don't you have a hysterectomy, and you'll have plenty to worry about? And even though Al-Anon's powerful, she wasn't willing to go to any length, I can tell you that. But they had another thing there. If you'd been good all week in the group I was in, you got a reward on Saturday. And somebody asked me, said, well, if you're in a hospital, how can you be bad? Well, in this particular hospital, they had a fountain out front about 60 feet tall, and it just beautiful water. And I put a box of Tide in it. It was big as this hotel, a snowball out there. Now, they thought that was bad. But anyway, nobody had been bad this week, and we got our reward. And our reward was we all gathered up front, and we got to hike. They gave us a peanut butter sandwich, and we got to hike over to Kmart. Now, this is exciting in itself, but what's real exciting is he called me up. He said, look, he said, most of these ladies smoke. And said, we can't trust them with matches. And said, you'll have to take the matches, and when they want to smoke, they'll contact you. So I left there, and I never felt better about life in my life. I left there with my little entourage, and I thought they finally figured out my ability as a leader. I felt like I was in officers candidate school, and to show you how sick I was, it was about 6 months after that I realized what had happened, that I was 44 years old, and I'd worked my way up in the keeper of the match house and a nut house, okay, But I got back the last time from there and drank a half a pint when I got out and went home to discuss my progress with Nancy, and she recognized something was wrong. She said, you've never really been in a rehabilitation center. You need to be rehabilitated. Well, he didn't want to miss anything. So she found one down in the lower part of the state that was run by the state, and off I went down to be rehabilitated. And I got down there, and I never had as big a resentment in my life. Now, I didn't know what a resentment was, but I was mad as a devil, and the reason being that I still had a job, had no insurance, but because I had a job, it was going to cost me $600 for 30 days, and the rest of the people there were wards of the state. We had a doctor that had just locked his practice, and he was there for free. So that $600 was burning me to death, and I think maybe God used that later to get me in touch with reality. They said an interesting thing. They said we don't support one way or the other Alcoholics Anonymous, but we do allow them to come here and meet on Thursday night. If you want to attend, you're welcome. And I had nowhere else to go, and I went to my first AA meeting, and I thought y'all the sickest bunch of people I'd ever seen in my life. See, what happened, they'd bring it in from 50 or 60 miles, and they'd have a speaker. And this one, the very first night, they had a young man about 25 years old, and he said an interesting thing. He looked like a fine fella. He said he couldn't take one drink without getting drunk. I never felt as sorry for anybody in my life. What I saw was one drink drunk, you know, and I've always, I like to help people, you know, and I wrote his name down, and I knew that when we got out of there, if I could find him and he could afford it, I could show him how to go 3 or 4 weeks anyway drinking and not get in trouble. But so that was my first impression of Alcoholics Anonymous. They said an interesting thing when I got ready to leave there and go back to Grenville. They said, you go back to Grenville and you don't drink, and we think you'll be all right. Well, I'd begin to suspicion this. So, but anyway, on the way home, I began to think about this thing. And I said, you know, I'm going to go back to Grenville and do exactly what they tell me. I'm not going to drink, and it's not going to work for me, and I'm going to sue them. I get my $600 back, I'll tell you that. So I went home and I did that. I just quit drinking. I just didn't drink anymore. And if you're an alcoholic of my type, that's the worst thing that can happen to you. I've never been as miserable in my life. I hated everybody and everything. I hated you if you could drink and not get in trouble. I hated you if you could not drink and have fun. And I was just full of hate. See, I had no program. I had no God. I had replaced alcohol with nothing. I just took it away. And it was a miserable about 4 or 5 months, I'm not sure. But I did get drunk, and that started a period of time I drank, I just drank zombolically. I was a zombie. I didn't know what I was doing or anything else. And I worked, and, you know, my job I would call, and I'd line up, say, a lunch appointment for Monday. And the guy'd say, well, you fool, you was over here Friday. And I just didn't know what I was doing. But anyway, I came back from Augusta, Georgia sometime in September, and I think I came back to Grenville to die. I don't know. I went back but this time we had a place in the back of the house that Nancy called my rat hole. And so I went back to the rat hole, and I don't know how long I stayed back there, but I never want to forget how I felt when I came to or woke up or whatever. I had to crawl to the bathroom. Everything, you know, if you're an alcoholic, you know what your liar smells like after you've been in there 3 or 4 days drunk, and I was just in bad shape, and my legs are rubbery, and I can't keep anything down. I dropped my head over my hands, and I said, my God, nobody knows. And she's standing there at the foot of the bed, and she said, well, maybe AA knows. And she got me dressed, and we went to an AA meeting. And I don't remember much about that meeting. I just know back in Greenville, we give a desire chip when you want to have a desire to stop drinking. And on the way home, she said, you didn't pick up a desire chip. I said, no, because if I don't get a drink down tonight, I'm going to die. Well, now that's the first time I think I ever got the least bit honest about my drinking. Prior to that, I'd been through this. I'd been to some AA meetings, and whoever took me, when they gave out the chips, they'd hit me, and I'd jump up and get one. If they hit 6 times, I'd go right through the year of my daddy, and I didn't care, whatever they wanted. But this night, I knew that I was going to drink, and I had enough honesty about wanting to stop that I told her, I said, if I don't get a drink down, I'll die. Well, that night I did get a drink down. It took a while. I put one down, 2'd come up. But that was on the 23rd of September. And this is important to me. All all intents and purposes, I haven't had a drink since the 23rd, but I wait 2 days to count my dry date. Now, I didn't have enough sense to do that when I got here. I think God knew how distrustful I was, and that if I thought maybe 23rd, well, I wasn't real dry, and I used that as a dry date, and I stayed around here and you all didn't say anything about it, I'd lose respect for you or whatever, but I do wait 2 days. And to me, that's a God thing. And since that 25th of September in 73, my life has absolutely amazed me. It's amazed me. If you'd have told me that one day I'd be in Houston, Texas with a boutonniere on, standing up and talking to people about Alcoholics Anonymous at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, it would just been impossible for me to comprehend. Things have just absolutely, I've seen things that would blow your mind. You talk about miracles. There's nothing in AA that aren't miracles, and it's just amazing to me that the more I'm in contact with you people in AA, the better my life seems to go. And I was telling somebody earlier, over the years, I've developed a lot of things that I never change. And I add on to them once in a while doing something else, but I never change the core. I always have certain things that I do, go to home groups and all this. Now, AA is not, I've never been, somebody said they weren't a poster child for AA. I certainly wasn't. They had a thing going when I came in, they had a thing where the chairman would say, does anybody here have anything bothering their sobriety? Well, that just gave a guy like me the chance. I'd throw stuff out there and none of it true, and they'd talk about it the whole meeting, and I'd just swell up, and I'd just say, it just made me feel real sharp. And that's why I'm so important. I'm so important about a home group. If you get a home group, if it hadn't been for a home group, I probably never would have made it. You see, the people in your home group listen to this. They know who you are. They know what your weaknesses are. They can tell your BS the minute you start. They're probably kind enough not to say anything. They just let you like a fisherman and let you run with the line, but hopefully they'll hook you before it's time. And that's why I say if you just hang around us, you'll get it. But anyway, in this home group, we had an old lady in there, and she'd been sober longer than dirt, and she had answers to questions I never was going to ask her, and she'd do irritating little things by saying, and why she always picked on me, I didn't know. There were other newcomers there. She'd say, here's my phone number. Call me before you take a drink. I'd say, well, you just gave me that Tuesday. Well, you may have lost it. Take my phone number. So I don't know how long I'd been sober, but I'd been in that home group quite a while, and she'd been listening to me. And I came off the road. It's on Friday, and the customers hadn't done anything right. I'd called home, and the chin music has already started, and it's just a miserable day. It's a day where you just got to drink. You got to have some relief. And so I called Taylor. Stopped out there on the interstate, and I called Taylor, and I told her my dilemma. And I said, I got 7 liquor stores to pass before I get home. And there's no way I can pass those liquor stores without stopping and getting a bottle. And you told me to call you, old woman, what do you want me to do now? She said, you're on the interstate? I said, yeah. She said, well, just step out into the median and strip off naked and they'll take you to jail. And I thought, well, that old woman is crazy. She had insulted my intelligence, and I just slammed that telephone down and went right by every one of those liquor stores. Now, today, we all know what Taylor did. Taylor stole my slip. I had every reason for a slip. And I don't know about if there's any slip planners in here, but I was 100% slip planner. I planned all kinds of things that you all didn't have answers for. And one other quick one is, I never had any light beer. And I keep seeing these commercials, and I thought, well, light beer shouldn't bother you, and that sounds good. And I'm sitting there on the front row, and the speaker's speaking. I'm not hearing a word the speaker said. I got a big mug of beer sitting up here with the frost all running down it. I can't wait to get out of there and get some light beer. And Sam, who had about 9 months, about the same time as me, came up that night and picked up a Desire chip. Both eyes were black. He looked like he'd been run over by a Mack truck. And I said, Sam, what happened? He said, Wednesday a week ago, I started drinking light beer. And I said, scratch plan A, you'll have to get something else, you know. So, and I have found out that if I come to Alcoholics Anonymous and I stay in touch with the 12 steps and my sponsor, you know, it says an interesting thing. Somebody quoted, said, nothing works so well as the intense work with the newcomer. But it puts another kicker in there. It says with each other, constant contact with each other. And I don't know how many of you, I hope all of you have a sponsor if you don't get one, but to me, one of the things that's about as important to me, or has been in my life, is a sober buddy. I need a sober buddy. I've always had a sober buddy, and it's just about as important to me as a sponsor is. A sober buddy you can get to and talk about these old timers. You can talk about how mean your sponsor is. And you know, he'll listen to you. Your sponsor's always got an answer. I don't know about you, but when I go to my sponsor, I don't want an answer. I want him to listen. But they got an answer. They'll listen so long, but then they, you know, well, a sober buddy is great, and I wouldn't want it any other way. I'd been, I don't know how long I messed around. I remember one time, first time they asked me to go out of town to speak, I came back and I had asked Jim, I said, Jim, what I do? They want me to go over to Pickens and talk. I said, what am I going to do? I said, I'm only 3 years sober. He said, go over and give him a 3-year talk. Said, you'll be all right, but said, you're in trouble if you try to give him a 10-year talk. And I realized that one time I came back in town from one of these things, and he would always say things very short and curt. And I said, hello. He said, boy, we need to talk. Be over here at 8:30. And so I went over, went back in his little AA room, and he said, look, I got a call from Pickens. And he said, they wanted to know if I was your sponsor. He says, I never want to get another one of those calls. Now, I didn't ask him. I didn't get into the trap of saying, well, was it this or was it that? I still to this day am not absolutely sure what he'd heard, but he had heard enough to keep me in stow. I've had a lot more trauma. I've had a lot of trauma since I've been sober. I've had a lot more trauma since I've been sober than I ever had when I was drinking. I was married to my Al-Anon for 10 years, and she died very suddenly. And I took her to the hospital to have her checkup, and she never came out of the emergency room. My second wife, I married an AA the second time, and we had almost 20 years. A great run. A lot of you knew, you all may not, but James did. A lot of them knew my wife, Donna. We had a great AA deal going, and I had gone to an AA conference up in the mountains, and they called me and told me Donna had had an aneurysm, and they picked her up out of the kitchen floor, and she'd passed away. And I remember coming down the mountain. They brought me home right away, and I remember coming down the mountain, and it was later on when I look back, it was just amazing. I was not upset at God. I was not mad at God. My question was, what do you want for me to do now? What am I supposed to learn from this? Help me stay calm enough, God, to be able to do whatever it is, learn whatever lesson you're trying to teach me. And that worked very well for me. I remember that night, we were at the wake at the funeral home, and I've never been as happy as being an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous and being married to an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous, because as I stood there and the line of people are coming up with their condolences, I didn't see just people coming, friends coming. I saw stories. I saw families that had been put back together. I saw mothers that had gotten in touch with their children again. Just tons of AA stories. And I can remember sitting there with tears coming down my eyes with gratitude at what a great gift this program has been and where I would be without it. And it's been that way. I'd been, after my first wife died, I had seen old timers. Old timers showed me what to do. I'd see an old timer, and he had his routine. He'd go to 2 meetings a week or 3 meetings a week. All of a sudden, he'd be going to 4 or 5. And I'd ask him, and some trauma had come up in his life. And what he'd done, he's tripled up in his AA involvement to get through this trauma. So I knew exactly what to do because you'd showed me. And so I tripled up, and I was very lonely. And because I tripled up, I met a lady in AA, and we were married. And then when she passed away, I did the same thing. I tripled up, and I met and got lonely, and I met another lady. And today I'm married to a lady that's been sober 12 years, and so I'm into another AA. So God's been good to this old drunk. I live my life the best I can with the guidance from the 11th step. I call the 11th step, I've got 2 words for it. It's either my walking around step or it's my American Express step. I don't want to leave home without it. And many times, that step to me, I never knew what to pray for. And it tells me exactly what to pray for. Just for the will, just for God's will to work in my life. But it does another thing that I need more than anything else, because when I know what God's will is, 90% of the time I'm not going to want to do it because it's going to go against my will. And it tells me what to do. Pray till willingness comes. So I know exactly when, and I think a lot of alcoholics know what God's will is. I just don't want to do it. And that step keeps me grounded. It tells me that I need to pray for the power to carry out God's will. And so you see, lack of power, I learned this in the first step. I think the first step is very important. It says we're powerless over alcohol. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol. Well, that automatically takes the alcohol out of the alcoholic's life. But it leaves life unmanageable, the second part of it. So if we can't turn to alcohol, which we always have, we have to find something. And I believe the book says a power greater than us to help us manage this unmanageability of our life. So once I took alcohol out, the rest of the steps after 1, what I'm doing is hunting that power to help me handle the unmanageability of my life. And I find this through the 9 steps I take. And then the promises begin to come true. And to me, they're beautiful. The one thing it says in our promises that we'll know a new freedom and a new happiness. Now, it doesn't say we'll get the old freedom back or we'll get the old happiness back. It says a new freedom and a new happiness. And I'm right in the middle of that now. I know a new freedom and a new happiness I've never experienced before. And I love the way the 100 put things together in that book because, as I look at these steps and I see them working in my life and I see paying a lot of time to step 9 and keeping things cleaned up with step 10, I see things begin to happen in my life. And it's strictly because I do it the way that the book tells me to do it. And so it's a great way to live. And I'm right in the middle of that. I told you I had one son that was quite a football player, and he's there in Grenville, lives about 2 miles from me, and he would like to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He's just not tough enough. He'll go to a football game and get a little bit too much to drink and be sick with a headache for 6 months. I can't understand it, but he brings a lot. He loves Alcoholics Anonymous because he sees what's happened to me in my life, and a lot of his peers have come in, you know, and he brings them and he calls them his pigeons, and but he'll send them there, and and he had 2 children. I have 2 grandchildren. One's 32 and one's 34, and they've never seen me take a drink. And I used to say, if I never got another reward from Alcoholics Anonymous, that's enough. But this past year, I've had 2 great-granddaughters, and they've never seen me take a drink, and they don't have to see me take a drink, as long as I stay close to you people and do what I know to do. And isn't that a great way to live? And you know, my granddaughter is a school teacher, and I kind of like school teachers, but she's a school teacher, and she called me over to school one day. She asked me to come over and speak to her class on alcoholism. And I went over I'm standing out in the vestibule or the lobby or whatever of the school, and this little gray-headed principal came out and looked me right in the eye. And she says, "Are you Allison's grandfather?" Now, I said, you know, I may never find out who I am. But I know what I am this morning. I'm an alcoholic that's found a substitute for alcohol, and that's a great blessing. Thank you all for letting me tell you about it.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.